there. My name is Tom Hatch, the creator of Salt, and today I want to talk about the origin of salt and my thinking around its creation. Now, I get asked a lot about where salt came from and why I developed it, but the reasons typically surprise people. Most people look at salt and they think of it as a configuration management system. Now, salt is an amazing and fantastic configuration management system, but this is just one part of what salt is. My goals behind creating salt was to have an automation platform that was hugely expansive and extremely capable. And so salt is actually the fourth time I've tried to make a system like this. I made one back while I was going to school as a research project. Now, the goal of that research project was to be able to reach out to multiple systems in parallel and control them for the purposes of HPC, ridiculously distributed high-performance computing. Now, the next system I made was for the US intelligence community, just to manage the automation of deploying software and deploying systems and services. The next one I made was an automation system that at this point was starting to look a lot more like Salt does now, but that was written for a music company. And so after I'd written these, after I had left the university, after I'd left the US intelligence community, after I'd left this music startup, I didn't have access to my old code. And I found that I was writing basically the same automation platform. Many of the aspects of that automation platform at that point had solidified in my mind. And they revolved around some of these topics right here. You need to be able to have remote execution to systems. But that remote execution should not be tied to specific pieces of functionality. It should be open-ended. If I'm going to bother putting an agent on a system, then that agent needs to be fundamentally expandable to the point where it can satisfy numerous different needs, not just a specific need, like configuration management or setup and managing of virtual machines or container instances. It needed to be a system that could fundamentally do anything. And that leads me into plug-in programming. Now, it took me a while to solidify a lot of my ideas around plug-in programming, but plug-in programming means that when we create interfaces, the way that we work with those interfaces becomes completely pluggable. And so inside of Salt, that's why we have so many pluggable interfaces that we're very proud of. Because all of a sudden, anyone can take and morph Salt to do whatever it needs to do to solve their specific problems. Which is why when we come back and look at Salt's use cases, they're so much more diverse than just the core tenets of configuration management. The next thing that I wanted was real-time data access. So many other systems management tools out there relied very heavily on doing major sweeping scans of an infrastructure, storing the information about that infrastructure in a database, and then making decisions off of the information in that database. How incredibly often I found that that database was no longer accurate. I needed to be able to gather real information about a system, and I needed to do it with parallel speed, and that execution needed to be blindingly fast. And that's where Salt's architecture came in. Instead of going to a database that has stale data, we can take real data to make our decisions. We can gather real data about the state of an infrastructure. And with Salt's event systems, we can receive changes to that data on a continual basis. And so finally we end up with a system which facilitates being able to reach out and modify, being able to set up and maintain, being able to receive events, but also being flexible enough that the differences that occur in every data center and every deployment can be accounted for through a pluggable interface. It's very, very rare that we run into a deployment of Salt that has a certain level of maturity that doesn't have some specific plugins that are made for that system, for that company, for that deployment. And the fact that those plugins are available ties back into that core design. The thinking that when I wrote it, I had already worked for numerous companies. I had spent time consulting and training. In the US intelligence community, I'd been dropped into deployments and systems of vast diversity. And I came to that conclusion that all of these different systems are different. And to be able to satisfy the needs of different hybrid systems, that some of them are going to be containerized and virtualized, some of them are going to have different types of databases, some of them have different compliance requirements. If we have a pluggable system, then that automation platform can morph to deal with the problems of those systems instead of being too static in its operations, instead of being a management system which is founded around more of an idea of linear management or just around configuration management. And so that's where SALT came from. The idea and the aspiration to create a management system that goes well beyond just one aspect of management, but can begin to engulf multiple aspects of managing data centers, managing systems, managing devices. Thanks for watching, and until next time.